So the content of today's talk is principally from a book written by my teacher, Zen Master Seung Sang, who was Korean and came to this country in the mid-70s, early 70s, and started teaching American students. I met him like in 1985 and practiced intermittently, and then eventually trained long enough, took on the role of teacher in the school. If you're curious, the book is called Compass of Zen. It's kind of a big overview, but it's in the style or his method of teaching. If you want to track it down, this is what it looks like. And he would sometimes give this talk, but he was a Zen teacher, so he would always make the point about a kind of teaching and then try to connect it to a Zen point of view, or you could say a Zen lens. There can be some confusion academics have different points of view about the Buddha's teaching, when it appeared, and that sort of thing. From Seung Sang's view, the Buddha's enlightenment was so deep about the nature of being a human being, it was too difficult to teach. As the story goes, he thought, well, people just won't get this, it'll be too difficult. He had a dream, and in the dream, a Brahmin visited him and said, well, first teach them some basic stuff. Once they practice those things, they'll become calmed down, mature enough, then they could see into this more complex or challenging view of what reality is. So it is often broken up as a small vehicle, working it out for myself, Buddhism, and the large vehicle, working it out for everybody. And my teacher would say, Hinayana was like learning to ride a bicycle. You have a certain set of rules, a certain kind of road, and one person gets to the destination. Mahayana is like a bus. Everybody gets on the bus. They still follow a different set of rules, follow a different set of road rules, but they all get to the destination together. And Zen style is like a jet airplane. Everybody gets on the airplane, completely different set of rules, but they all get to the destination together. So not so important from one point of view. It's very important to find what resonates for you. If you hear teaching and it makes complete sense, take it in. Have a little skepticism, but trust how you feel. Because that's an indication that in your case it's medicine that will help. If you hear some teaching today and it doesn't seem like it's going to help, and you feel like, well, that's not very pragmatic or doesn't make sense to me, then just let it go. We learn a great deal more just by sitting in silence, watching our heart-mind, and asking this question, what does it mean to be a human being? Why am I alive? And what am I doing? So that's really the point. Seung Sang would often tell us, understanding these insights don't always help. And understanding it in an academic way won't help. But having some insight, some attainment, will. So I mostly give the talk to encourage people, because we never know when we're going to have an insight. We set an intention to understand ourselves. We set an intention to help ourselves help this world. And then we simply practice and we live our lives. Jobs, raising children, retiring, whatever it happens to be. Any age, any time. Our own life teaches us. So try to keep that in mind. So the first teaching of the Buddha was insight into impermanence. Everything keeps changing, 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 changing. Now, if we attach to name and form, then we suffer. But if we're able to navigate changes, 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 changes without attaching to name and form, then we don't suffer. We accommodate the change, but we're not suffering. It doesn't mean if we have a toothache, we don't feel the toothache. Yeah, changing, 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 a toothache appears, we accommodate it. That's just the pain of being alive. But if we add to it, why did I get this toothache? Poor me. What did I do to deserve this? And I want to live so I never have a toothache. Now we've made 3 or 4 stories. That is suffering on top of the pain of the toothache. So the practice is, oh, I don't need to make all these stories. I can just rest, endure the pain, take Tylenol or whatever, and carry on. Also, when we have some pain like a toothache pain, or maybe something more severe, like a cancer diagnosis, we can look deeply into it and think, I'm one of tens of thousands of people who have this cancer diagnosis. And all of us are afraid. And all of us are going through some kind of real physical pain. I am not alone. That is our bodhisattva nature, seeing deeply into, oh, everyone's body is like this. It is possible to get sick and be in pain. That can actually take away a lot of suffering. So this changing, changing, changing was the first teaching. The early teachings, insight into impurity. If you have a big emotion, anger, outrage, in the beginning teaching, Buddha taught to control that. See it as an impurity, see it as a poison, and practice so that you didn't feel it. Later on in the teaching, Buddha said, oh, anger? We just use anger to help this world. Oh, loneliness appears? We use loneliness to help this world. Oh, joy appears? We use joy. Whereas big emotions in the early teachings were taught of as clouds or poisons, and we wanted to purify ourselves of those. Then the third, insight into non-self. That's just meditating enough to see things are still. That's looking into our experience to see, oh, I'm not a single thing. I'm not my body. If I was, I would have kept it at about 40, maybe 45. I'd have stopped it, right? But I couldn't do that. Also, a little thinner. That'd be nice. I'm not my thoughts. They've been changing constantly. When I was little, I was full of thoughts somebody else put in my head. My mother, my father, my siblings. Then my teachers put a lot of thoughts and feelings into my head. And then things like guilt and shame and identity were all created. But that's just not me. And then it changed. So when I say I, me, what is this thing I'm referring to? That becomes the practice. Who is this I? So that's the third, insight into non-self. If one does it consistently, we'll see this world is completely still. And then it's still again, and still again. Zen Master Sung San would say, you know how in the movies it's 24 frames per second, or 21 frames per second. It looks like everything's changing, because the frames are going through the camera so fast. But if we stop the film strip, then it's just one picture, and it's still. Then the next picture is one picture, and it's still. So our heart-mind is making time. Our heart-mind, basically as an evolutionary fitness development, links everything together, and then we can be good hunter-gatherers, we can be good agrarians, we become what you see that we are. But that was an evolutionary fitness adjustment or development. Reality itself, if we become completely still, we can also see it's still, moment by moment by moment. So when a person sees into that, they see into emptiness. And that's the end, in a sense, of the early teaching. The person that has accomplished that feels peaceful. Nirvana is the extinction of their attachment to thinking. So all their thoughts appear and they don't attach. They feel completely still. And they're done. So if that's the one person getting to the destination, seeing the true nature of reality and then resting there. And maybe they help this world, maybe they don't. The Mahayana view gets a little wider. So that's the next point, this big vehicle. Where the first teaching ends at emptiness, Mahayana view starts with emptiness. The first point is our substance and the universe are the same substance, and the substance is empty of any particular self-nature. When we see into this, that emptiness cannot do anything because it's still. But when we see into it deeply enough, we realize it can do everything because it's still. Because we're participating in this universal substance, we say it's the absolute. All things have this quality. This was the Buddha's insight. The star, the sky, the earth, the dog, people, everything has this basic substance, and it's the same, and it's empty of anything in particular. My teacher would say it's like cookie dough. A factory that makes animal cookies, so it makes a giraffe, or it makes a school bus, or it makes a taxi cab. They're all made out of the same dough, but they all have different kind of functions. They do different things in the world. So that was a pretty simple way to see this point of everything is that absolute, the demonstration of that. The next insight is the fact that there's no external characteristics and that everything is empty. Don't be afraid. All name and form are created by thinking. So, coming here today, I was late. My heart mind said I was late. Yeah? And we imagine that we're sitting in a church. The church doesn't say, I'm a church. We think, oh, this is a church. It's where we're practicing. And the trees outside, the tree doesn't think, I'm a tree. It just is a tree. And the tree's not thinking about, oh, my branches stop here and the air starts there. Or my leaves are here and then there's something else outside of me. Same for a dog or a cat. They understand their relationship and function, but they're not imagining some separation. But our heart-mind makes name and form. Very useful for curing cancer, very useful for growing crops, building city-states, and starting countries and wars. Those all depend on name and form. But the Buddha's insight is, oh, name and form are also made completely by our heart-mind. So it's not that name and form disappear, but we don't attach to them. If I grab name and form, now it controls me. But if I hold it loosely, yeah, name and form, but what's the truth? The absolute is empty of any name and form. The third one's insight into existence, emptiness and the middle way. The absolute, this hit, is always complete. The tree is the tree. The sky is the sky. All of these things are completely complete. We can't add to them. When a baby is born, boom, complete. Maybe a little sick, maybe some health issue, but that's also complete. And we can't add to it. Of course, we have a situation and a relationship and a function, so the baby needs care. We take care of the baby, and the baby grows up. And this is, again, impermanence. We have a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old. They have some needs. The 3-year-old disappears, and the 4-year-old appears. And the 4-year-old disappears, and soon the 10-year-old appears. So the way we relate to the 10-year-old is completely different than the 4-year-old. So this teaching of impermanence is also a teaching of emptiness. Where did the 4-year-old go when we're relating to the teenager? If we grasp, oh, I wish the 4-year-old were here, or where did the 4-year-old go, then we suffer and we don't communicate well with the teenager. Instead, it's, who is this? What is this? So moment by moment, everything's changing, and also everything is the absolute. So this insight is the path of emptiness, and it's this idea, I am, is our fundamental delusion. Now we use it. I have a job today to give a talk. You had a job today to meditate. The volunteers had a job today to set it up. So something's going on, but it's empty of a particular self. It's completely interpenetrating with everything else that's around. A little bit like the view of a quantum physicist. So everything's interpenetrating. All of these things are empty. And it's all flowing harmoniously together. And as soon as I grab onto I am, then I have all kinds of suffering. I am not. I am not enough. Or I am late. Or I am not clear. So we start to make these stories once we're holding this idea of I as something separate from the air, the sky, the whole universe. And if we make this I am not, then we think we're not complete. And we don't believe in ourselves. We don't believe in our emotions. We don't believe in our ideas, our impulses, and we don't understand them. We don't know how to use them. The fourth insight is the true aspect, insight into the true aspect of all phenomenon. Everything is empty. This emptiness is the absolute, so that means everything is the truth. We live in a truth world. I would ask you, can you show me something that's not the truth? It's not possible. Maybe we even have a politician who lies to us. So that's true. The politician is lying. Maybe we have people in our lives who misrepresent how they feel. So that's true. They don't understand their feeling. They misrepresent it for some kind of reason. All of these things are true. And they are the absolute. This is kind of challenging. In other words, we're not making, oh, a bad situation is bad and a good situation is good. We're saying there's a function for everything that appears, and we use it if we're clear. Our minds are like a mirror. Our before-thinking mind is like a mirror, and our thinking clouds the mirror or smudges the mirror, makes it a little bit dirty. So we clean it by just becoming clear, and then it just reflects. When red comes, we reflect red. When white comes, we reflect white. If a hungry person comes, we don't just reflect hungry, we don't just become hungry ourselves, we also give them some food. That becomes our vow to help this world, but we have to see the hungry person clearly first. So if I have this opinion, oh, that's my relative, and the reason they're hungry is because they did this, this, and this, and they were so irresponsible, and if I just give them food, it's going to make them more irresponsible. That's our heart-mind, covering up our clear mind. And so we're not seeing the situation, the relationship, and then our function. Now, moment by moment, we never know what that is. We just try to pay attention and navigate it. The final insight into the the interpenetration of all phenomenon. Space. If we look at space, the sky, a storm comes, the sky doesn't mind. The storm goes, the sky doesn't mind. Trees grow into space, space accommodates it. Lightning hits the forest and the forest changes, the forest accommodates it. All phenomenon are constantly interpenetrating with each other in a harmonious way. We might say, oh, the forest fire is bad. Yeah. But from the forest point of view, it's just changing. My younger brother, who's works in the environment, says the Everglades never worry about a hurricane. The hurricane comes in and the Everglades are fine. Big ocean surges and swells. It's the human beings that have the problem with the hurricane, not the Everglades. So that's an interesting point. All these things are interpenetrating, interacting in a completely harmonious way. Human beings make some idea or story, then we're out of harmony with what's already a complete and whole truth. And finally, insight, which sees that phenomena themselves are the absolute. When we see everything is the absolute, you coming to practice today is the absolute. When you see the blue sky, it's the absolute. When you have to get a job to pay your rent, that's the absolute. When there's a divorce in a family and everybody's hearts are broken, that's the absolute. Then we're capable of great love and great compassion no matter the circumstance. And of course, our hearts break. If you're watching the news, I watch the news a little bit, you can't not have a broken heart. The climate catastrophe, the starvation, the things that human beings will do to one another when they're holding an idea or holding an opinion or holding a point of view and then imposing it on some other group of people. It's the history of the world. The Buddha saw this. The Buddha did not have an ideal life. He came from the Shakyamuni clan, and at some point, I don't know how old he was, he had been teaching for 10 or 20 years. His entire family was slaughtered by another clan who lived in like the valley next door. They were just overpowered, all killed, and they took all their wealth. So here's the Buddha teaching all of this amazing teaching, and he learns. Aunts, uncles, sisters, brothers, all gone. That is the absolute. So that is also true. That's not separate from this complete unfolding. When we can take that view, great love, great compassion is what we're able to feel. If we hold on to, why did this happen to me? And we make I, my, me separate from the people who have died, separate from the people who have done the killing. Once we make ourselves separate from all of that, it's not possible to keep an open heart and an open mind and to do the right thing, whatever that is. There's no way to know until we're in the situation. It's extraordinarily challenging and extraordinarily beneficial. So the last point, Avalokiteshvara, is the person mentioned in the sutra. Another name for her is Kwan Sembosol, and this is not in my notes. I'm riffing here. The translation of the name is the one who hears the cries of the world. And another translation of Avalokiteshvara is the one who looks deeply. So at different times, the name was translated differently. Well, you are Avalokiteshvara, and you are Kwan Sembosol. You're the one who hears the cries of the world. You are the one who looks deeply. And when she's represented historically in statues and pictures, she has three heads, past, now, present, and future. And the heads she has four faces. She's all-sided, so she looks in all directions. So when she sees the conflict in Ukraine, she sees all sides. When she sees the conflict in Sudan, she sees all sides. When she sees the conflict in Myanmar, she sees all sides. In Myanmar, the Buddhist communities are killing people. So even being a Buddhist doesn't save you from this narrowness, this shrinking down of a heart-mind. But Avalokiteshvara, Kwanzaa Bosal, the Buddha is all-sided. This compassion flows in every direction. If we trust ourselves and we trust our impulses. So I'll stop speaking there. I'll try to answer any questions I can. We have about 10 minutes left. This is pretty radical teaching. If you practice in a sincere way, you can have these insights anytime, and you'll know what to do.